Okay, guys, welcome. We are going to talk today about the top three things that everybody gets wrong about the high school recruiting process. Okay, and I'm here with my co-host and founder of Fast Track Recruiting, Willy Wood. Willy, do you want to go ahead and give yourself a little bit of an introduction here before we dive into our three tips?
Sure. So I started this business 4 years ago, in the hopes of changing the landscape for high school student athletes, looking specifically to, compete in track and field and cross country in college. Before that, I was serving as a track and field coach. I coached at the Division I level as a head coach for over 25 years. I coached total for about 28 years. I spent the vast majority of my coaching career as the head coach at Columbia University. I was there for 2 years. 20 years, I'm sorry. Other stops along the way included the University of Kansas and the University of Georgia, probably the most notable. And then, I also worked at a few smaller schools as a head coach. So I have a good background with regard to have working at each different level. I've spent my entire adult professional life neck deep in recruiting, and I'm here now to kind of shed the light on how that world exists on the other side, from the different perspectives. So, yeah, I've spent my entire life coaching track and field, recruiting track and field athletes, and now helping track and field athletes get recruited.
Excellent. And I'm Ty. In case you don't know me either, I'm the founder and head coach of Chotsky Endurance Collective, which is an online coaching community led by elite athletes. I've spent the last 10 plus years coaching at the high school level, the college level, as well as adult runners. That's mostly who I coach now, everybody from absolute beginners all the way to some Olympians. And I'm also a professional distance runner myself. So I've made 4 US national teams. I've been at 2 Olympic trials, and I've done a whole bunch of stuff at everything from 5K, 10K in college to now, 100 plus miles as an ultra runner. So I've run the gamut as far as distance and intensity. So let's dive into it here because today we're not going to talk about us, but we're going to talk about why we are sharing this information. I'm going to lob this one back to Willy.
Right. So I started, I had this idea of starting this business about 4.5 years ago when I was approached by a family. And, a few things really hit me profoundly so while I was coaching. Number one, it wasn't an equal playing field. The coaches had all the information. The schools had all the information on their side because, number one, this is what they did for a living. Number two, they were dealing with hundreds of student athletes every year through this process. When in comparison, and oftentimes the families that were being recruited, many times this was the very first time they had ever gone through this process, and they were blind. They didn't know how to navigate this process fully, and there's number one, there's very little information out there to start with, particularly like productive, like useful information. And then secondly, a lot of the information that does exist, even though scarce, is sometimes erroneous, like it's just not true. So oftentimes these families were either settling for, maybe a lesser offer financially with regard to a scholarship, or maybe at a lesser school because they didn't know what their options were. So when I started doing this, I really saw it as a mechanism to even the playing field, to get all the information that a family needs to know to for the consideration process of where they want to ultimately go. And in my service, it extended far beyond let's just get recruited. It extends to how do we get recruited to the place that's going to be the best fit for me? And there's just so many different aspects that are constantly in motion, whether it be, the changing of coaches, which programs focus upon which particular events, track or field, how much money is available in a particular year at a school, what those schools' recruiting needs are. And most people just do not have access to that information. So I started Fast Track Recruiting to give people access to that very information.
Absolutely. All right, now let's dive into it. We are going to go through three tips. These are the number one things that people ask us about that we recommend, or that people always get wrong. So the first one, active communication. And I'm going to review these, and then Willy is going to walk you through an example. So active communication, this is the probably number one misconception that we see in the recruiting process, which is that people think coaches will come to them. And the truth is you have to reach out to coaches. Even if you are superstar, the best runner on your team, the best runner on your league, the best thrower or jumper, you need to be reaching out to people. People aren't going to come to you in this day and age. Okay. Willie, you want to walk us through this example then of Douglas?
Sure, yeah. So I was working with a high school student, Douglas from Texas, and he was a phenomenally talented middle distance runner. He went to a really small private school. He won often because there was just not much conference in the or not much competition in the conference he participated in. And he put up solid times, but they weren't off the chart crazy solid times because he raced to win. So, he was under the idea because he was being told this that, college coaches are going to find you. Don't worry about this. Just keep concentrating on racing well. And that was his hope that college coaches would come to find him. Well, come to find out, college coaches didn't find him because his times weren't standing out above all the above all the else. But there were so many other elements involved. What the college coaches didn't know was prior to running the open 800 meter, at every single meet, he ran the 4x8 relay first and foremost, and he always got it very far behind and had to catch up. So it was number one, a hard race. Secondly, they would race him in the 400 meters, of which, he was in the state of Texas and the 400 meters was competitive. So he would have to run all out. Then he would be running these 800 meters with like 45 minutes to an hour's rest after those two events, and being told to race just to win because he was going to come back and run a 4x4 later. So, when coaches saw his 155, they weren't reacting to it in a way that would be reflective of how they would be reacting had they known the whole story. So when he and I started working together, I got him to send out emails specifically outlining his season, what a typical meet looks like. And instantly he was, being recruited by all the top Division III schools. He was being recruited by a lot of Division I, like big time Power 5 schools. And he actually ended up at a Power 5 school. And he's doing amazingly well. And none of that would have happened if he hadn't reached out to these coaches, let him know his situation, and reinforced this narrative of, I am not a 155 800 meter runner. I'm probably a 150 or a 151 guy right now. I just haven't had that opportunity to showcase that yet.
Excellent example. Okay. Tip number two, another huge question we get all the time is about scholarships and financial aid. So this is a big part of why people want to get recruited to run in college, is to help settle up the bill. So the number one thing is to know your options. Every division, every league has their own rules about what you can and can't expect in terms of financial aid. That's a big part of what we go over. We have entire chapters about this in our online course. The biggest takeaway, though, is that you can get financial aid, scholarship money from multiple sources. You can get it for need, you can get it for academics, and you can get it for athletics. And guess what? In certain divisions, you can combine all of those things and stack them up. Okay. So Willie, tell us a little bit about Ellie and how she was able to do this for herself.
Yes, for sure. So Ellie was from South Carolina, and it was her goal all along. She wanted to go to an SEC school. Because there's only one SEC school in the state of South Carolina, finances were going to come into play because she was going to have to pay out-of-state tuition. The dilemma was that with her times, even though she was very, very competitive within the SEC, the best case scenario was going to be a very small athletic scholarship at best. So, upon learning this, her and her family became greatly discouraged. They started looking at other places that may be more affordable. But when we started working together, we were like, the first thing I noticed about Ellie was an extremely high ACT score and an extremely high GPA. I mean, her scores were off the charts. Her GPA was 4.0, straight A's all the way through. So we explored the ideas of having them look at schools that have generous merit-based scholarship offerings outside of athletics. And she stumbled upon the University of Alabama. That was always her dream school. And Alabama at the time and still does, they give very strong merit money for out-of-state student athletes in an attempt to attract them to their school. So she was able to get her entire tuition covered, in-state and out-of-state tuition. She received a small athletic scholarship that covered her room for her. But as a result, with the academic and athletic money being stacked, all she had to pay was for meals. So she was paying like $5,000 of this total, $40,000 or $35,000 cost, because she was able to stack, because she was being able to take advantage of doing so well in school, that she created for herself an opportunity to run in the SEC, run at the school she always dreamed of running at, and made it quite affordable because of the new rules that allow you to stack.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a complicated world, but when you get it right, it can be just completely life-changing. Okay, our final and third tip is to start early. Now, we don't want you guys to obsess. We don't want our incoming freshmen to already be, having their college, entire college program mapped out. But what we do want is a general long-term roadmap that you guys can have. So the earlier you start, the less stressful it's actually going to be because you're going to be taking even just some small steps at the beginning and map things out. And remember, the most important year for college recruiting is actually your junior year because those are the times and the grades that are going to be freshest on your college application. Okay. So now, Willie, walk us through our last example here of our sprinter, Johnny, and how this fit in for him.
Right. So I started working with Johnny very early. He was a freshman when they first called, and he was very intrigued by the Ivy League, in particular Princeton. His father had gone to Princeton and played football there, and he wanted to run for Princeton. He had a phenomenal freshman season. Like he was very, very good. We connected, mid freshman year. He was racing extremely well for his age. He ran 50.5 in the Open 400. And he was very interested, as it was his family. It's like, all right, so what do we need to do to get a shot to, get an admission spot to Princeton? So he and I and his family discussed performance goals. So he was able to take those back to his college or his high school coach and discuss, all right, these are my goals right now from end of freshman year to end of junior year. I'm at 50.5. Ideally, I want to be below 48.5 and put myself in a position to go to Princeton. That's my hope and goal. He surrounded himself with a great coach. His coach understood what the aim and what the objective was. They set up a training plan, logical, not panicked, just, incrementally progressing every 6 months or so. It made sense. They created racing opportunities that allowed him to run fast. They gradually introduced new types of training methods that, to allow him to maximize his training potential. And through just setting up just a normal, solid plan, not just roaming aimlessly, through this field of happenstance, just setting up a solid plan with his coach, having a 2-year goal. He ended up running like 48.09, was offered a spot to Princeton, and he's running there now. So the idea of, just get an early start, communicate with your coach, and so much can be accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really does lower the stress when you have that long-term roadmap because you can be a lot more patient with it. We've seen that over and over again with athletes. So definitely guys start early. Okay. So we want to keep this short and give you guys some value, but we have so much more in our fast track recruiting online course. This is a super extensive opportunity for you guys to learn so much from Willie and from me. We have put literally decades worth of knowledge and experience into this course, and it walks you through that entire process that we follow with our one-on-one clients that you and your families can go through together. Okay, so we go through all the process all the way from very early steps, like we just talked about with Johnny, of setting freshman year goals with actionable things that you guys can do together with your family to make sure that you guys end up at the best possible school for you. And it's not just about athletics. We want it to be a good fit for you athletically, financially, and academically. All those things are really important. Okay, so right now, if you click the link below this video, we are going to send you our very first module absolutely free. No questions asked, no pressure. You don't need to put in a credit card or anything. And if you love it, you can go ahead and sign up for the entire course. This is a 12 chapter program. There's a lot in there. And then you can also always reach out to us about our high touch one-on-one programs directly with Willie and his team. Okay, so there's a lot here, and I cannot wait for you guys to take a look at this, give us some feedback, and hopefully we can help you on your journey to your perfect college fit. Okay, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.